So today, we're going to jump into the story of one man, Steven Langley. And what's so fascinating is that his life wasn't just his life. It was basically a mirror, reflecting all the crazy, chaotic, and world-changing events of the first half of the 20th century.
So how does a guy go from this to this? I mean, look at the contrast here. It's really the heart of the whole story. On one hand, you've got a man who is completely pleased with his life, everything's going according to plan. And on the other, a battle-hardened operative fighting in a global war. It makes you wonder, right? How does that transformation even happen?
All right, let's set this scene. We're in the summer of 1916. The place? Bridgehampton, New York. We're talking about a world of total privilege. Think sun-drenched beaches, easy living, and while Europe is being torn apart by the Great War, for Steven Langley and his friends, that's all just distant noise. Barely even a rumor.
Yeah, Steven's life was, well, it was defined by ease. His dad was a wealthy steel magnate. He was already a successful young broker on Wall Street. His summers were basically one long string of parties and sailing. I mean, his toughest decision of the day was probably which boat to take out. The fate of nations, not even a blip on his radar.
But you know that kind of perfect, idyllic life can't last, right? Something's got to give. And in this story, the thing that shatters his predictable world doesn't exactly tiptoe in. No, it comes roaring in. Literally, an engine roars, and a daredevil pilot named Joe Kinney lands his Curtiss Jenny biplane right there on the beach, practically on Steven's front lawn.
And right there, that's the moment. That's the pivot point for his entire life. Joe convinces Steven to go up for a flight, and bam! That one single experience, it just lights a fire in him. A passion for adventure and a thirst for a thrill that a safe, comfortable life could just never, ever satisfy. As he says here, it was the most exhilarating experience of his life. He was totally hooked.
And the change wasn't slow. It was incredibly fast. He doesn't just, take up flying as a little weekend hobby. No way. He buys the plane from Joe. He gets really good, really fast. And then, the second America joins World War I in April 1917, he enlists. Just like that. The sky literally pulled him out of the audience and put him right on stage, in the middle of history. But, as you can probably guess, what he expected and what he got were two very different things. He's imagining himself as this heroic fighter pilot, dogfighting over the trenches in France. The reality? Well, thanks to his dad pulling some strings, he gets stuck in Normandy as a flight instructor, far, far away from any real action. And the result is just this soul-crushing boredom and a feeling of, what am I even doing here?
And as the old saying goes, happy men do not cheat on their wives. His unhappiness being so far from his wife Barbara, it all leads him to make a pretty serious moral compromise. He starts an affair with Lisette, a young Frenchwoman, really just as a way to escape how miserable he felt.
But what Lisette says here is so telling. She talks about how the war has taken away all the men. They're just gone. It kind of puts things in perspective, right? This affair, it wasn't just about Steven's personal issues. It was a symptom of this huge, widespread despair and loneliness that the war had created for an entire generation. There's this massive void, and people were just desperately trying to find some way to fill it.
So his old friend, Joe Kinney, who's a captain by this point, sees the mess Steven is in. And in this incredible act of, tough love, he basically saves his friend from himself. He pulls some strings and gets Steven transferred into a real combat squadron. And the irony is just perfect, isn't it? The one thing meant to save him from his personal mistakes is the very thing that throws him headfirst into the danger he'd been chasing from the start.
Okay, let's fast forward. The war is over. It's 1922 now. The world is a different place. We're in the middle of the roaring 20s, America's economy is booming, and Steven, he's back on Wall Street. It looks like he's finally settled down into that prosperous life he left behind.
So here's the next big question. The guy has it all, right? Everything he was supposed to want. A family, a great career. So why on earth would a man like that turn to the criminal underworld? I think you know the answer. That need for a thrill, it never really went away. And the pull of the past is strong. He gets back together with his old daredevil buddy, Joe Kinney. And right then, Prohibition hits, creating this huge, dangerous, and very profitable new opportunity. So he gets a brand new, super fast speedboat, and all of a sudden, he's a bootlegger. He's swapped dogfights in the sky for high-speed chases on the water. It's that same familiar rush of speed and risk.
And what's so interesting about this part of his life, from broker to bootlegger, is that you can see it's not just a bunch of random adventures. There's a pattern here. It's a constant escalation. The stakes keep getting higher. And every risk he takes, every skill he picks up, it's all accidentally preparing him for an even bigger fight that's starting to brew back over in Europe.
I mean, just look at this trajectory. It's incredible. You start in 1916 with the carefree socialite. That guy becomes a World War I fighter pilot. The pilot becomes a Prohibition bootlegger, and the bootlegger becomes a World War II spy. Each step completely transformed him, building on what came before, until the man he was at the beginning is just gone, completely unrecognizable.
And think about how his role as a fighter evolved. In World War I, he's a soldier in a uniform. He's fighting out in the open, in the sky. But in World War II, he's a spy, a clandestine operative working in the shadows. He's fighting alongside the underground resistance. It's a much more personal and, frankly, a much more dangerous kind of war.
So in the end, his whole life is really a miniature version of the era he lived in. It's this sweeping saga, a journey from the innocence and carelessness of that pre-war world right into the grim, weary reality of fighting a global war against fascism. He didn't just watch history happen, he was forged by it.
Which brings us to the final big question, doesn't it? What does it take to turn a spectator, someone who just watches history go by, into an agent of history, someone who actually shapes it? Well, if Steven Langley's story tells us anything, it's that it's this crazy mix of things. It's personal ambition, yeah, but it's also just pure chance. And maybe most importantly, it's the heavy weight of the choices you have to make when the world around you is changing in massive, monumental ways.